Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen Sheldon. I'm an investigative counsel in LSC's Office of Inspector General. I'm joined by Catherine Silvestri, also an investigative counsel in the OIG. We'll be providing this briefing today to supplement an advisory that was sent out on protecting your organization against business email compromises and payroll fraud. First, we're going to go over the agenda and what we'll be discussing today. Next slide, Catherine. So today's agenda includes explaining business email compromise schemes, the business processes targeted by BEC schemes, tactics used by cyber criminals to compromise emails, best practices for employee education and awareness, fiscal controls, email security, and network security. We'll also discuss two additional examples of BEC schemes. And I would like to note that the examples we are providing are tailored to LSC grantees and address actual BEC schemes that have been reported to the OIG by grantees. And after that, we're going to provide some additional resources for grantees. In the next slide, we'll discuss and define BEC schemes. So to begin, a business email compromise scheme is a type of cybercrime where the cyber criminal uses email to trick an employee into sending money or divulging confidential grantee information, such as grantee account information or personally identifiable information, also known as PII. BEC schemes aim to exploit vulnerable business processes that involve a financial transaction by compromising email accounts to deceive employees. Typically, the ultimate goal of a BEC scheme is to divert funds through a financial transaction, such as a wire transfer or a gift card purchase. The FBI actually recently reported that losses from BEC scheme complaints has increased from $360 million in 2016 to more than $2.7 billion in 2022. And there was a 17% increase in BEC schemes between December of 2021 in December of 2022. The next slide will talk about business processes that are targeted by BEC schemes. The first is a payroll direct deposit scheme. The purpose of the cyber criminal here is they're attempting to divert an employee's direct deposit bank account to their own. They usually do this by tricking the employee that handles payroll by impersonating the employee of the account they want to have changed. This might look like one of your attorneys that's requesting a direct deposit change through email to one of your fiscal staff, but really it's the cyber criminal, also known as a threat actor. With the vendor payment scheme, the purpose of the cyber criminal is to attempt to divert a real or fictitious payment to the vendor. How do they do this? So first, they might request a change to the normal payment process, such as changing the grantee check payment to a wire payment. They could request changing the legitimate wire payment to their own bank, or by sending a compromised email with a link to an invoice and the ability to pay the invoice through the fraudulent link. Another one is a gift card scam. So the purpose of the cyber criminal here is they're attempting to have a grantee employee buy gift cards and to send the gift card information to them so they can spend it. Usually they'll ask for a photo of the back of the gift card. How do they do this? They'll use a compromised email, typically impersonating the CEO or executive director. And they're often targeting a brand new employee that might not actually know the culture of the program yet and might be more susceptible to the authority of an executive director's requests. Another scheme is grant remittance scheme. The purpose here is for the cyber criminal is attempting to have the grantor, such as LSC, change a grantee's bank information. So that includes the account and routing numbers to their own in order to steal monthly grant payments. How do they do this? Well, they compromise emails from both the grantor, such as LSC, and the grantee to request a change to the bank for the remittance. Since grantees accept grants and they also give grants and subgrants, each grantee should have controls related to how your program remits grants as well. Another one is going to be communications with financial institutions. So the purpose of the cyber criminal here is they're attempting to trick a bank employee that they're a grantee employee with banking access. So that would be the executive director or your CFO. so that the bank employee will allow them to make a money transfer directly from the grantee bank account to theirs. In the one example we have, the cyber criminal or threat actor used intrusion to access the executive director's email account. The cyber criminal then sent an email to 2 banks using the executive director's email asking for access to the bank accounts to allow for another employee to approve transactions in the executive director's absence. Thankfully, both banks noticed the spoof domain of the grantee that added an A to the domain address and used 2-part verification by calling the executive director to confirm the request. So it's also important to mention here in this slide that the losses listed are those incidents reported to the OIG, and there could have been more. This is a good time to also remind you that under LSC grant terms and conditions number 17, you should report to the LSC OIG hotline within 2 days of discovering that you've been the likely victim of a cyber incident. Next, we're going to discuss other business processes targeted by BEC schemes. And one of them is communications with clients through lawyer impersonation schemes. The purpose here is to elicit a payment from the client. Cyber criminals are targeting actual clients of law firms. We have not had any report that a client has been targeted by email, but we have had a client targeted by mail requesting a retainer fee. So we do see this as emerging scheme that could affect our grantees. Another process is, data theft. So data theft is typically the beginning or middle part of most BEC schemes. Grantees will steal the data in order to help their request for a payment seem legitimate. Items they might steal include internal forms, employee client PII, tax forms, account information, and the like. Another one is false invoice schemes. The cyber criminal here impersonates a legitimate vendor or a subgrantee and emails a fake invoice that resembles a real one. The email request asks for a payment different from the norm. This one's very similar to a vendor scheme as well. Another is a CEO fraud scheme where the cyber criminal impersonates a company's CEO or executive director through email to another employee. The email is an urgent request for a money transfer, such as direct deposit, change, or grant or gift cards. So tactics used by cyber criminals to compromise emails include computer network intrusion, which is when a cyber criminal gains unauthorized access to your network or to an employee's computer. Unauthorized access can occur to your program's entire email system or just one employee's email. It can happen to systems and applications within your network, like your case management system or your financial system. And we would like to note here that intrusions at related third parties, such as vendors, subgrants, or grantors, can also provide a cyber criminal with confidential grantee information or with access to your emails and can be used by the cyber criminal to further a BEC scheme. We did have an intrusion case at a grantee where a threat actor was auto-forwarding emails from LSC to the junk folder in order to respond and ultimately intended to steal a grant remittance payment. I'm going to turn this over to Catherine Silvestri, and she'll talk to you about social engineering.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So social engineering is a form of manipulation. The cyber criminal here is attempting to trick your employee into either divulging sensitive information or to making a financial payment different than what would normally have been done. And here manipulation typically starts with research. The cyber criminal is investigating your program and employees at your program. And on the screen here, we just have an example of what some of the information you may have on your website. You may have a staff listing. You may not have a staff listing, but those grantees that do, you may advertise who your executive director is, who your human resources, your payroll are, fiscal director, accounts payable, some of the positions that a cyber criminal can identify as potentially or likely being involved in the process of financial transactions. And we're not telling you not to have this information on your website. We just want you to be aware that when you post something on your website, whether it's your annual report or some other information, think about what a cyber criminal may use that information for. And the other thing too is we want you to train your staff with the idea that they know that their information is likely known by cyber criminals and is public. We know that having transparency is important to nonprofits and important to legal aids. We know that your 501c3, your nonprofit organizations, and even some of your information may be required to be transparent, such as IRS tax form 990s. And also just with the idea too, some of this information is out of your control. With things like LinkedIn, a cyber criminal can simply search your program's name and find out any of the employees that are listed on there, either current employees or former employees, and likely their titles. So it's the idea of operating within a public world and also making the decision to decide what you place on your website with the idea of cybersecurity in mind. Another tactic, email spoofing. Email spoofing is when a cyber criminal uses an email address that mimics or masquerades a legitimate or known address. Here in example 1, we are basically very similar to what happened during an actual cyber attack against both LSC and a grantee. And where LSC's typical domain is lsc.gov, the cyber criminal was able to change or to make a fake domain that said lsc.com. In addition, when they spoofed the grantee domain, they simply took out the dash. And in this, the cyber criminal was aiming to divert grant remittance from LSC to the grantee. In the second example, a lot of times you'll receive an email where it just has the name of the person that you're receiving it from, likely somebody familiar. So here it's Betty Smith. And if you hover over that name, you may see a familiar address, or you may see an address similar to the one just below it, which is a lot of letters and very unrecognizable to you. So if you have a red flag, if there's a transaction that is trying to divulge information or talk about a financial transaction, take that extra step to hover over that name to ensure it's an email address that you recognize. And here is another tactic, spear phishing. So spear phishing is the idea that it's a phishing attack, but it's targeted. The person that they're impersonating that is sending you the email is known. And then they also know your address or your name and your address. So here in the example, we have the email is from Laura Simpson, a known person to Andrew, and it's addressed to Andrew. In addition, spear phishing, it likely has some sort of personal touch to it. So here they're discussing a speech that is known to be coming up. So and likely they knew that information from some sort of social engineering. So here it's spear phishing is the idea that it's a targeted email and that it's asking you to either make a payment or to divulge some sort of information. So next we'll talk about best practices and how to prevent or detect these types of situations. But before we get into best practices, we just wanted to remind you that to be aware of whatever cybersecurity or IT requirements you may have from grantors like LSC. For example, LSC has IT baselines, and shortly they'll be coming up with an updated IT baselines. And then also they have cybersecurity requirements in their grant terms and conditions. Just be aware of these as you create the cybersecurity or the security within your network and your email security as well. So first, for best practices, we'll talk about employee education and awareness. So one of LSC's new requirements is cyber threat training for all staff. But we want you to think a little bit more about that. Cyber threat training is annual enough. Are you, as a grantee, as a program, receiving a lot of cyber attacks via email? Does your staff need to be trained more than annually, or is it best if they do? And also think about what staff is receiving those cyber threats the most. Is it HR? Is it accounting? Is it other administrative staff? Because they're the ones that are being targeted. And a lot of times, these accounting staff, the more practice they have to see what these cyber attacks look like, the better that they are to be able to thwart them. Emphasize the importance of cybersecurity at your program. Bring up cybersecurity and the different measures that your program is doing, and get staff thoughts on it during staff meetings. Let staff know that it's an important issue. simulate BEC schemes for your staff. The LSEOIG provides you a lot of different examples of what BEC schemes look like at grantees or against grantees. Maybe simulate those so staff can see what's happening in the community. Have employees report suspicious emails or incidents. Be wary of requests for information that should be common knowledge. If somebody's asking you for a form and employees know that those forms can be generated from an employee shared account or from their payroll account, don't send it through email. If it's common knowledge, don't, be wary about sharing it via email. Prohibit personal emails. About 50% of our cyber attacks are initiated where the cyber actor is making the person believe that the employee is sending them a message from their personal email, and especially for executive directors. And there's always a sense of urgency as to why they couldn't send it from their work email. So the policy of prohibiting personal emails for business activity would be a best practice so this issue didn't occur. And then report cyber incidents to the OIG hotline. We can help you respond to them, ensure that you report them to the right places, but we also can make the grantee community aware of what may be happening to them or could prevent what could happen. The next best practice area is implementing strong financial controls. So with BEC schemes, they're absolutely targeting financial transactions. So financial controls to prevent or detect these types of scams is extremely important. So one is automatic notifications for systems such as payroll. If you use a bill payment system, ensure that the automatic notifications are on. So that way, if a change is made to an account, such as direct deposit or an address for that employee or that vendor, then a notification will be sent to you as well as to the person or a company being targeted. If a request for a change is being made, verify the identity of the person or company requesting that change, and do that through another means than the email that they sent you. Do it through a phone call with a known number. Do it through Teams or FaceTime so you can verify their identity. Another one is two-part authorization. If a request to a payment is being made or to the address related to that payment, make sure that somebody else within your organization is approving it. Any types of these decisions should have a review process that it requires review by more than one employee. Next, consider using a system or software specifically designed to authenticate payments rather than sending invoices through emails. This will really help if you receive invoices from vendors or any other type of entity. Don't rely on email to authenticate the receipt of that invoice. Regularly review and update financial policies to ensure cybersecurity best practices. So keep up to date with advisories, both from us, from the FBI, and any other entity, but also pay attention to the types of attacks that may be occurring, the emails that may be coming into your program at other grantees, and ensure that you're updating your policies to respond to what you know is going on. And then follow written policies without deviation. A lot of the employees that are receiving the emails about the financial transactions, they're not looking to deviate from the policy. The emails have tactics that are specifically targeting these employees. They're using manipulation tactics. Make sure that the employees feel empowered to follow policies, and that even if the policy relates to the CEO or the executive director, and it has a sense of urgency, make sure that that employee knows that they can contact the executive director, and make sure that they know that they must follow written policy, even if it slows down a payment. Next is best practices related to email security. So if you've had an IT security assessment or you're looking to have it, make sure that it includes an assessment of your email security, since many of these cyber attacks are originating through email. But one of the many email security functions that you will see is multi-factor authentication, in that when an employee is logging into their email, they have to do one more verification than just their login and their password to get into the system. So make sure that if you have a system like email or any other system like payroll or billing, that the multi-factor authentication is turned on and is being used. This helps prevent access when somebody's credentials are stolen. One of the other things to consider is blocking international IP addresses. As many of you know, a lot of these schemes are originating from outside the United States. So consider blocking international IP addresses from accessing your network or your email systems. And then the next things listed here are email authentication protocols. So all of these SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are all used to help prevent spoofed emails from coming into your system. So consider having those in place if you do not already. And next best practices we'll talk about is best practices to secure your network from intrusion. And so here it's implement firewall configuration in software patches and updates. So ensure that your network includes a properly configured firewall. And with this, work with your IT professional, whether it's someone on staff or a contractor, to ensure that your firewall is configured specifically for your program and your program's needs. Next, ensure that your software and systems are up to date with security patches and updates. This will help prevent a cyber criminal from exploiting vulnerabilities due to the unmet patches or updates within your system. Regularly review and assess your organization's software inventory and to ensure that all applications are currently and adequately protected. Also ensure that only registered devices are connected to your network. All of these, again, are to prevent intrusion into employee computers and within your network. And next, we'll go through a couple of examples of cyber attacks at LSC grantees. And these are 2 additional cyber attacks that were not in the advisory we sent out. So when we go through these, just think about the tactics that the cyber criminal may have used through the attack. And then think about the controls that the grantee did or should have in place that would prevent or detect this type of attack. And also think about if this attack happens at your program and is successful, what steps you should do to immediately respond to this attack. So first, in this example, the cyber criminal used a Gmail account to impersonate an actual grantee employee. The email appeared to be from an employee's impersonal account and was directed by name to the payroll administrator and had a sense of urgency. The payroll administrator believed the request was legitimate and provided a direct deposit change form, an internal form, to the cyber criminal through that Gmail account. The cyber criminal then returned the form to the payroll administrator from the Gmail account. The form included the other employee's actual name, home address, and social security number. It also included a voided check with the employee's name, but from the cyber criminal's bank. Finally, the payroll administrator changed the employee's direct deposit information to the cyber criminal's bank because they believed the request was legitimate. The grantee then deposited the employee's payroll into the cyber criminal's account. So tactics that were used here, the directed personal email, and knowing that the name of the payroll administrator was a spear phishing tactic. Next, that the fact that the cyber criminal knew the employee's name, social security number, and personal address likely was from intrusion. Potentially, it could have been social engineering, but to know that information, it was likely an intrusion of some sort. Controls to prevent these types of attack. 1, prohibit personal emails to be used for business activity. That would have stopped this scheme in its tracks. Second, make sure administrative forms are not sent by email. Have them located where centrally within your network, within the payroll system, within a shared account that all employees can access and know where to access it. Make sure the payroll accounts and other accounts use multi-factor authentication, and that is turned on. And only they make sure that only they are the ones that can change their direct deposit information within that system. And that if that system has a notification function, meaning if something is changed in an employee's account, that a notification is then sent to them to verify that change. And what could the grantee have done or may have done or should have done to respond to this type of attack? And one is make sure you have a written incident response plan on file. And then within that response plan, make sure one of the if there is a loss of funds, that you immediately call the bank to stop the payment. Sometimes it's too late, but it's always worth trying to stop the payment and contacting that bank. Next, if you have cyber insurance, call your cyber insurer and have them help you through the recovery process and the response process. Cyber insurance typically, we have not seen this, it covers the loss of a cyber attack. What it does is cover the expenses for responding to a cyber attack. They can, if you have a ransomware, they can help you restore that data. They can help you, if there's an intrusion, they can help you identify where that intrusion is located, and ensure that your network is secure. And one of the other responses to consider is, after any type of attack, review your policies and ensure that your policies are would prevent this type of attack, and if not, update your policies with other prevention mechanisms. Next, for example, here a grantee CFO communicated through email with an employee from their CPA firm. The communications were legitimate. The emails discussed the amount the grantee would owe related to the grantee's annual financial statements. Next, the CFO on the same day received an email from a cyber criminal impersonating the same employee at the CPA firm. The email appeared to be sent from the CPA firm's email domain, but had a slight variation. The cyber criminal then the email to the CFO included a fake invoice with the same amount that was discussed in the legitimate emails, and also included instructions for the CFO to make a wire payment to the cyber criminal's bank account. And this was on the CPA firm's letterhead. Next, and finally, the CFO believed the email was legitimate and made the payment to the cyber criminal's bank through a wire transfer. So again, here, the tactics that may have been used by this cyber criminal. The email where it appeared to be from the CPA's firm with a slight deviation was spoofing. And then next, the fact that the cyber criminal had knowledge of the actual amount of the invoice from the prior legitimate email was intrusion. And we do know that this was intrusion of the CPA firm's email system and not the grantees. And so just an idea that, your information and your vulnerability could be a result of an intrusion at a third party's system or network. Controls that may have prevented this. Have written policies related to payments for vendors. If you have a bill pay system, make sure you have written policies related to that system and what requirements are needed for a vendor to change how their payment occurs, especially for wire transfers. And then also for wire transfers or changes to payments, just like you would with an employee, make sure that there's more than one person that's approving that change, two-part authorization. Make sure that you're verifying the identity and a different means of that vendor, just like you would for an employee. Give them a call, do FaceTime, have another way to verify who they are and that the request is legitimate. And then next is response. How would you respond to this type of attack? And it's the same way that we explained earlier, and this is almost identical for most cyber attacks, is have an incident response plan. If there is a loss of funds related to it, call your bank, call your insurance, cyber insurance. And if there is an intrusion or there's a thought of intrusion, determine whether you need to call a company, an IT, a forensics firm, or someone to ensure that intrusion is taken care of and there's no longer access or unauthorized access to your network. And then if there is PII information that is at risk, determine how you should respond to whether it's employees or client PII information. And finally, we just wanted to let you know where some resources are located. So we've discussed the advisory that generated this cyber briefing. That is cyber briefing. Well, this cyber briefing as well as our advisory are all located on our website. We just want to show you, so below is a screenshot of our website. As you can see, we have a button straight to the hotline for reporting cyber incidents. We also have a button to the cybersecurity resources that you can provide to your staff. Also, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. If there is a loss of funds or that you have data that is compromised, we definitely suggest that you file a complaint with the FBI, and you can see their website here. But they also have relevant alerts on what's going on related to cyber attacks. We thank you again for your time, and we appreciate your attendance.
Thank you for joining us.